Hi, and welcome to the Bay Games online get-together. I'm Matt Locke, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Ed Morrison from Melbourne. Hello, Ed.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How's life in Melbourne?
Oh, mate, it's a bit chilly down here. We were just speaking off air before that, potentially looking forward to getting back indoors because outdoor sessions are getting pretty old pretty fast here. But other than that, all good in Melbourne.
Excellent. Well, it's good to have you here. And I guess what's the idea for these get-togethers? Well, you can only watch so much Netflix, and we wanted to bring you something special straight to your couch. With that said, welcome to our audience here within the Zoom room, and of course to everyone watching this right now on Facebook Live. If you have any questions you'd like to ask either of our guests tonight, just comment under the Facebook Live feed and we'll do our best to get to them. So don't be shy, we are live, and this is your chance to chat with a couple of legends. Of course, if you're here with us in the Zoom room, then you can ask your questions directly. You see, about halfway through the 60-minute chat fest, we'll be opening up the floor so that you can chat with these guys directly. Okay, look, there's no doubt, coronavirus is changing the way we live, work, communicate and play. This pandemic and the government's response measures, such as restrictions on social gatherings, have had a significant impact for many people around the world, often causing stress, anxiety and concern. Prioritizing our mental well-being has never been more important, and it's one of the keys to staying healthy. Now, as many of you know, long before C19 stepped into our lives, the Bay Games has been supporting suicide prevention and mental health charities here in Australia and in other countries around the world. It's been a testing time for everyone, and we'd like to open tonight by hearing from the CEO of Are You OK, Catherine Newton, who is reminding all Australians that having meaningful conversations with mates and loved ones could literally save lives.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, CEO of Are You OK? Right now we don't need to tell you that it's challenging times. What we are here to tell you is that we can be a nation of kindness, of looking out for others and of connectedness. Many of us right now will be feeling different levels of anxiety, fear and confusion. But for those who are feeling well and able, we're encouraging you to check in with your friends, your family and your teammates. How can you do this when we're being told to distance? Well, we can use the devices that are at our fingertips. Lock in a FaceTime, lock in a phone call, send an SMS or post online. All of these things are available to us. And it's also a way that we can trust the signs if we spot that someone's behaving even more out of the norm. For example, that might be listening or looking at the language that they're using, what they're doing online. Are they posting more or less? Are they answering your calls or your messages? Just anything where you think your gut is telling you that something's not quite right. Most of us right now can be a virtual shoulder, so please stay connected and ask, are you okay?
That's such an important message. Now, apart from being absolute bloody legends, our two guests tonight are also Are You OK ambassadors. And with that said, I'd like to introduce the first guest, Mr. Steve Willis, also known as Commando Steve, who's an Australian personal trainer, author, and television personality. In fact, he appeared on the Australian version of The Biggest Loser as a trainer from 2007 until 2015. But as we'll find out tonight, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Steve, good evening. It's great to have you with us. How are you doing at your end?
Well, wonderful, Matt. Thanks for having me on, and hello to Ed and Khan. Good to see your faces. It's been some time.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And where are you coming to us live from tonight? Where in the world are you?
So I'm live from Sydney. I'm out Castle Hill way, and yes, I. As Ed was saying earlier, it is getting a little chilly and the outdoor sessions are getting harder and harder each day.
That's exactly right. We're looking forward to the 13th of June, where we can go back indoors.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, very good. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you being with us. And what I'll do is, Ed, I'll hand over to you and you can introduce our second guest for this evening.
Yes, well, our other guest tonight is a man of many talents. He's a 4-times individual CrossFit Games athlete and 1-times team member on a CrossFit Games team. And it's fair to say that he's one of the most likable people in the competitive functional fitness scene, both for his ability to completely send it when necessary and also how approachable he is off the competition floor. Now, whilst being one of the most consistent CrossFitters over the last decade, he's also been a gym owner and he has helped raise awareness and promote conversations around mental health and the role that exercise and training can play to improve mental health by being open and honest about his own challenges. His more recent brainchild, the Sweat Therapy Company, is a unique training philosophy with self-discovery, happiness, and growth in all walks of life at its core. And as Matt said, he's also an Are You OK ambassador. I'm, of course, speaking about Khan Porter. Khan, how are you this evening, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, buddy. A lovely little rap sheet from you, man. Very kind of you to say those nice things. Yeah, good to see everyone. Good to kind of catch up. Bit chilly as well over here, but loving it.
Excellent, mate. Well, we've got a lot of topics to dive into with yourself. And let me just say, it's nice to finally get to chat slowly with you, because I always feel like I'm just chasing after you while you're trying to warm up or you're in the marshalling area of a competition floor.
Mate, it is. It's always that back and forth. I will apologise as well in advance. I've got a very excited puppy that's pulling at cords on my computer, trying to find every noisy toy in the house. So if you see me kind of diving out of screen, it's to grab something out of his mouth that he's not supposed to have.
No, but if you want to get him on camera, we'd like to say hi as well. No problem.
We'll say hi at some point. I'm sure he'll pop up. Here he is right now, actually. Speak of the devil.
There he is.
Hey.
Khan, the challenges of COVID-19 have been pretty evident for everybody. So I guess we'll start there. But for you, mate, I sort of feel like elite athletes, their challenges have been very public in terms of having their livelihood or their the events that they were going to compete in taken away. Now, for yourself, you qualified for the 2020 CrossFit Games as an individual. Last year, you didn't go as an individual. So a lot of people, and I'm sure yourself, are looking forward to your return there. How have the last few months been for you to sort of grapple with the uncertainty around the CrossFit Games?
It's a good question, mate. I think given the context of a lot of things in the world at the moment, my, let's call them issues around not knowing what's happening with competition seem pretty small comparatively. So in that sense, you know, as much as it is like frustrating not having a very clear end goal and not having clear goalposts for what I'm working towards as an athlete, it's certainly is kind of like given there's a bigger context, there's bigger things going on, if that makes sense. So sometimes, yeah, it can be frustrating. And I certainly went through a long period early on in the quarantine stuff. So where I was trying to train, and then sort of became a little bit apparent that we had no idea what we were training. He's got another toy. I'll be right back.
What do they never work with animals?
Well, I think what
I think that's all his squeaky ones gone. I think that's the only noise-making ones. You can't do any more damage with those. Anyway, yeah, early on in the whole period, I was trying to stay pretty dialed into training. And then obviously as things became more and more apparent that this wasn't going away anytime soon, I definitely had to kind of drop off from doing the full volume. Obviously, they're still planning to try and go ahead with the games in some capacity. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I was one of the lucky few that's, I guess, pending a lot of things, could still compete. But then again, like, there's so much going on in the world that I just, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. I feel like it's, as much as I would love that to be the thing that's at the forefront of what I've been thinking about and am thinking about during this period, it's not. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Absolutely, mate. And I think a lot of people would resonate with that in terms of what was at the forefront of their mind a few months ago sort of gets pushed to the back. So I think that's something that our listeners would definitely resonate with. Matty, if we cross to you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I guess, so Steve, I mean, from your perspective, obviously it's been, I imagine, having a huge impact on life and business at your end. How have you been? I guess lots of trainers, lots of gyms have taken their training online. What's it look like from your perspective? How have you tried to keep your athletes and your members active and moving and sort of the right mindset?
Yeah, well, I've gone online and engaged, with people through Zoom. I guess fortunate in the profile piece to I've had many gyms and the like reach out and ask me to run like a Zoom session for their members to just as an offering and, something different. So I've done that numerous times, from gyms over in Perth to down Melbourne way and, here in New South Wales and up in Queensland. And that's great. And I guess it's the prescription too. And a lot of people don't have the resources or the equipment at home. And those that do, I guess, are quite fortunate. It's that's definitely a benefit. So a lot of bodyweight workouts for me. And I think that online space, it's much like taking a group fitness class. It's not like you can just stand there on the end of the camera and just dictate, all right, we're going to do an EMOM and, explain thrusters and devil's press and whatever you want to do, some, lunges and sit-ups and the like, and just let them go at it. You kind of got to do it with them. So I was getting a lot of volume in myself in that way. But I think now how these restrictions have lifted a little, it's great to get outdoors and be training groups. So bringing a number of trainers together and then just breaking those groups up over an hour and just playing the rotation game. And so they can all share the love and just have, a few little AMRAPs here and there. And, I've got a load of equipment and a four-wheel drive. So I just load it up and go to the park. But it's I guess in the biggest sense with business, it's killed pretty much everything for me. Like I used to do a lot of appearances and a lot of travel and a lot of almost ambassadorial type work and with corporates. And in one day, that all disappeared. I'm talking every job through to the end of the year. And you've got to do the best you can with what you've got. And I got to sat and shed many tears, but I just had to do the best with what I've got, and just stick with it. And I think that old Rocky saying, it's about taking the punches and getting knocked down, and it's just about getting back up. You just got to keep getting back up and just keep in check that emotional side of our being, and take a breath around it, and just put a procedures in place that see you stepping forward. And as we gain more clarity, you can expand back out into what you may have been doing previously.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like some of the terminology you can then sort of hark back to your days with ADF in terms of you can only deal with what you've got.
Yeah.
And basically create a new plan when that plan hasn't worked so well everything changes. I guess you've been faced with adversity in many different aspects over your career so far. So it certainly sounds like that's had an impact on how you're now adapting.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what the future looks like in a few months' time. It's jobs might start coming back in because people are trying to or companies are trying to market themselves again and get their wares out there, or it might not. And I've been enjoying the grassroots stuff. I'm passionate about what I do. I've been in the game, for a long time, and I've loved CrossFit from the moment I was introduced to it back in 2004 or to the end of 2003, start of 2004. And I've adopted and employed that methodology across the board for myself on The Biggest Loser, which, I had great success competing in CrossFit, and I guess just promoting it in many different ways. I guess I had a number of different things that were all happening at the same time, and I chose those over continuing my efforts as a CrossFit athlete. But it's great to see guys like Khan come through, and a whole host of others. And it's CrossFit's evolved in leaps and bounds, and I get to deliver that every day. Whether it's indoors or out in the park. You might call it boot camp or group training, but to me, the methodology is the methodology, and that's what I adopt. And you'll see me pretty much with my truck going all over the place with dowel or PVC, and it's that skill sets, it's that base. And people, when you employ that, and I guess you show you care, you give a damn, and you help people to move better, they want more of it, and they'll come back.
Yeah, no,
0 degrees, as I'm saying.
That's exactly right. What was interesting, I certainly, I think it was an interview, or maybe it was one of the Are You OK pieces that you've done, where you referenced the on-screen persona of the Commando from The Biggest Loser, and the real you. Well, there's no difference. because you are passionate about what you do, and you absolutely, you brought what you brought on screen is what you bring off screen. That's just your philosophy. So I think what you're saying is that that's how you operate, which is fantastic. Now we've got
and I guess, you know, the what
sorry,
yep.
go ahead.
No, you were about to say you got a question, or
yeah, we had a question sent in from someone called Nera DeLock, who is related to me, I'm not going to lie, but like everyone else, she has sent her questions in, and it seems appropriate here. She certainly said, after leaving school, you joined the army and spent a great deal of time in the special forces. And what did you learn about yourself and those you served with that translated into your career as a fitness professional?
Awareness, observation. So it's your ability under immense amounts of pressure to remain observant, or, you know, have that awareness of your environment and self. And, you know, look at the tier 1 CrossFit athletes. It's their ability to understand what they're doing in very small time frames, or very short time frames, and under a lot of pressure. And it's that observation. There's a great book, actually, I think it's called Chasing Fire, where they delve into that a lot more, about, you know, those who step out into the peripheries of life and, you know, achieve amazing things. And it's that skill of awareness. And that's probably the greatest thing for me from the military. And I've gone on, I guess, in many senses, you know, with Are You Okay? And I guess just getting older as well, where you recognize that your energy and your time is precious, and where you afford, or, you know, that direction, what you choose to put your energy and time into is an art. And I've really enjoyed cultivating a lot more of the yin side of things, and just focusing on being more calm and still and aware. And it's actually helped me even in my own training. You know, you can be in the midst of your training, and what people will see from the outside and what you're actually feeling is this hurt, but you coexist in the middle there somewhere, and you can still achieve this state of calm. And you talk to endurance athletes about the rhythm, about getting into this flow. And when you get there, it can almost seem surreal, and it's like it's not really happening, and you can almost trip yourself up intentionally to break out of it. But once you start to experience it, you want more of it. It's almost addictive, and you just want to go to that place there in the middle, in and amongst all of it. It's like almost having an out-of-body experience, I'd say. And off you go.
It can be described as almost hypnotic, I suppose, and that in itself is a nice feeling that would make you want it again, for sure.
That probably is a nice segue, I would say, for us to talk about. I think I could direct this to both of you gentlemen, because you're both Are You Okay ambassadors, and I know this is something you're both passionate about. But Khan, perhaps I'll start with you. You've always talked about how training and exercise can improve mental health, and some of the struggles around mental health, and that we need to have more conversations about that. Do you think that the last 2 or 3 months, one of the silver linings is perhaps that people have been more open to have those conversations, given that everybody is going through some sort of challenge?
Yeah, I certainly think that it's been a really good period, because people have had time. And when people have had time, particularly downtime with themselves, you're going to come face to face with some thoughts and feelings, and have to explore them in greater depth. And one thing that we've still been able to have during this period is the ability to communicate with each other. So it's certainly something that in my immediate circle, I've seen a lot more conversations. But I think and hope that that's a shift, irrespective of COVID, and that's something that is starting to become more normal. And sort of how I look at mental health and how I look at talking about mental health is, it shouldn't be, and in my opinion, it's no different to talking about physical health. If you get someone that's going to the gym, or they start a new diet, I mean, geez, people start a new diet, they don't shut up about it. But when people start a new physical health thing, they talk about it, and it's so normal. I'm going to the gym this afternoon. I'm going to do this afternoon. The ultimate goal, well, not for me, but I think for society, and what I would love to contribute to, is a cultural shift to talking about mental health in that same way. And I think that the conversations are starting, and they've certainly been given a little bit more light of day given recent events. But I don't think we're quite there yet, because I still think that we're in, I'm going to call it the awareness stage. And if you're going to look at like making massive change, I think change requires three things: awareness, understanding, and then action. We're aware that mental health is a real issue. We're aware that it exists, but I don't think, other than the people that are kind of dealing with it, diving into it headlong every day, I don't necessarily think that the understanding is there yet. And I think that there's going to be more education required before we can actually create meaningful change through action that's going to lead to, I guess, normalizing the conversations at a level that they need to be normalized, I think, for particularly blokes to be making any kind of big changes.
Yeah, sure. I think we should respect the fact that both of you gentlemen are high-level CrossFit Games athletes, and there's a view around, I guess, hypermasculinity that you're incredibly mentally tough, or you have to be incredibly mentally tough to get to that level of athleticism. And sometimes people think that means not showing that you're struggling. Steve, can you speak to that? How do you balance out being mentally tough in situations like the CrossFit Games, but then also being honest and open with the idea that, hey, at the moment, I'm actually struggling?
Well, it starts with acceptance in my book. You know, we I guess use the phrase mental toughness, and I've been in the military. I've worked with some guys I thought were phenomenal human beings, and you know, they did the job to they never left anything unchecked. Yet they've then transitioned out of the military and they've unraveled. And you know, you talk about resilience and you talk about this mental toughness, and they had all of that, but in a different environment and in a place where there was a lot of uncertainty, and then maybe they were incapable of adopting or utilizing the skills or manner, meant that they struggled. And for me, I guess from the military, you know, CrossFit, doing some television stuff, and I guess just life in general through experience, is the ability to accept in the present moment what's going on within the environment. So there's that acknowledgement of what's taking place within the environment and how I'm reacting, or if I'm mindful of my reactions and I put myself in a place where I can be more responsive. And with the response means you don't have to respond. And so you don't have to afford time and energy to something that doesn't need a response. So then you can be more focused into the things that you do. And the big thing is acknowledgement as well. So acceptance and acknowledgement. And when something is acknowledged, it tends to calm. And then it's not hypervigilant, or there isn't agitation or anger or too much aggression in that sense. And you can soothe things. And I'm talking more so from inside as well. And you put that in the context of working out. A lot of people, if you look at CrossFit in its early days, they never told you what the workout was going to be. There was always that uncertainty, and it was sprung on you, within, a couple of days or even hours. And it's like, this is what you're going to do. And you'd see people go to water when an exercise, or a workout wasn't a strength of theirs. They were already beaten. And that's, I guess that was the kind of the Dave Castro art, being an ex-Navy SEAL as well. He would just play with people in that way. But that's where I think the mental toughness side of things is, where you can, regardless of the situation or the environment and how you're reacting to that, you can calm things, soothe things, and just come from a place that's a little more centered. You then don't burn up and utilize too much unnecessary, I guess, mental energy and physical energy. So you can then you can have laser focus on what it is that you need to do.
Khan, I'd love to hear you.
And we all, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's everything that we do, there's an emotional response to it. We can't we cannot do anything in life without there being emotion attached, and it's being observant of that emotion. You know, I coming from the military again, you know, you talking on that, they used to say to us, it's the ability to compartmentalize and to remove emotion from action. And you might be able to suppress emotion for a period of time, but it will always come back. It'll always be triggered in some way, shape, or form over time. And the more you suppress something or you resist something, the bigger it gets. And that's like what Khan was saying before. Humanity at this, you know, where we are in the year that we're in, because we've been ignoring things for such a long period of time, it's getting bigger and bigger. And if we don't do something about it, well, it's our own fault, because it's not the world that's in crisis, it's humanity. Humanity needs to just calm down, be accepting and acknowledge the things that are taking place, and then put a plan and procedures in place to interact and be more connected and kind and loving and compassionate with one another, because we're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Khan, I wouldn't mind just hearing your thoughts quickly on that. I'm using the word contradiction, but I would prefer it to be a different word, between the extreme mental toughness that I know it takes. I mean, I watched your performance, I think it was Regional 16, that last workout, the rope climb thruster, where you made it to the games by winning that workout. That's probably one of the most mentally tough things I've ever seen. But then the other side of that is being open enough to admit when things are a struggle. So how do you balance out those two things?
Yeah, it's kind of exactly what I wanted to, would love to add to that, is that I think mental toughness as a concept is almost contradictory in nature, because I think the toughest thing mentally that you can do is actually to be vulnerable. And I think that you will gain more, let's call it strength, through being vulnerable than by trying to be kind of like extremely tough of mind. And I think like what Steve was saying is perfect. Like you've got to acknowledge, and you've got to, I think you said acknowledge and like speak about what, like your current situation and where you are in life and where you are in the world. And to do that, to give an honest appraisal of yourself, like nobody's perfect. There is a great deal of vulnerability that comes with accepting where you are right now and then taking responsibility for change. And I'd even say, if you look at like sort of mental toughness, like there is a great deal of ability to deal with discomfort plays massively into being a CrossFit athlete. In fact, I would say that my ability, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily the fittest or the strongest or the most skillful athlete, but I can really, really, really hurt, and I can deal with it really, really, really well. And I've always been good at that, whether that's because of my background or whatever it is, like I'm just good at that and I get that. But the hardest thing for me about being an athlete, and I'd say, I mean, hats off to Steve, he was on national TV as well. The amount of vulnerability that goes into putting yourself out there in front of people, opening yourself up to criticism, and particularly doing something that you care about. Like I give a shit about being an athlete. I really care about that. And every time I take the competition floor, I'm going out there and I'm putting myself on display at something I've worked really hard for, and I care deeply about. But in those moments of vulnerability, that's where I gain the most mental strength. And I think that that's the shift that we need. That's what I would love to instill into people when they're thinking about how to become more mentally tough. I'd say the answer lies in becoming more vulnerable.
Interesting, fantastic answers from both of you, I have to say, and thank you for being so candid. I guess it flies in the face of, I guess, the way a lot of us have been brought up. Especially for the males who still these days, certainly from my generation, were brought up very much, being the providers and a little bit the caveman mentality and so on, where we weren't encouraged to be open and be vulnerable. That's not the way life works. So, I mean, what would you suggest is the first step for those? I mean, obviously for the next generations coming through, if we're parents, of course, we can have an impact there, and the whole subject is more openly discussed. So hopefully that has an impact for future generations. But what would you say, I mean, what was the turning point for you, Khan, for example? What was the tipping point where you felt able to and felt the need to show that vulnerability? Was there a tipping point? I mean, was there a moment you remember?
Yeah, there was definitely a tipping point when I realized I needed to take action on the state of my mental health. And that was a fairly dark period in my life. in terms of being open and honest about it, I guess as an athlete, I've always had a public persona, and I felt like for a long period of time, my public persona was this idealized version of myself I wanted to put out there. And the weight of then trying to go through this process of addressing some mental health issues that I've had since I was a kid, they just didn't align. And just one day, I think, like, I was just so over the kind of mental and emotional toll that it was taking on me, kind of living, it's almost like a double life, let's call it, where I was portraying one thing online and then dealing with another thing in my own head. And I was just, I had a really open and I did a really long open post about just how badly I battle with anxiety and how much that is triggered by the competitive process. So I was back then. And I think that I got such an overwhelming response of people saying like, oh my God, I can't believe you're just admitting to that. And like, I really resonate with this. I had so many dudes reach out to me, and it was right around then that I actually decided to go back and study psychology and counseling. And I saw that that was so much more powerful a path for me to go down than the athletic path in of itself. And yeah, I don't know if you call that a tipping point, but it was kind of like, I just bit the bullet and spoke openly about how I was feeling. And then that was cathartic in its own way. Like, I've always used writing as a means of managing my mental health. So when I'm going through something, I'll write about it. And often just in my notes section, it's just a really easy way for me to brain dump when I'm being overwhelmed, when I'm in like an anxious loop about something, or I'm in a really bad, like part of like depressed state. I'll just write about whatever it is. And it gives it kind of, it takes it out from being just in my head, gives it a tangibility, and it separates me from it for a period of time. And I know that I can come back to that and look at it, and you know, and it's not something that I need to keep thinking about because I've got it there and I can come back to it. And I think that was just like one day I just brain dumped and then posted it. I was like, fuck, here we go. Let's see what happens. And yeah, like as I said, it was a big tipping point for me in terms of how I was able to manage my own mental health and how I was able to approach the whole process of being an athlete and the value that I can take from that experience over and above just performance-based things. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there was definitely a tipping point where I decided to go and get help for my mental health, but I don't know if that was necessarily when I then opened up to the public. It was 2 years before I really opened up to the public, I guess, about everything that was going on for me.
Yeah, sure. No, again, I appreciate the candidness of your answer. And Steve,
well, I think that candidness is important. That's what I'm trying to talk about. Just sorry, I hate to interject. I was out there. I speak about it candidly because for me, mental health should be spoken about like that. It shouldn't be something that you should be embarrassed about, and it shouldn't be something that requires great deals of bravery or praise for speaking about openly and honestly. I think to normalize talking about mental health, we need to just speak about it super candidly, not from like that perspective of like embarrassment and shame, and not from a perspective of like a place of like, oh, you know, bravery and look at what I'm doing type thing. I think that's a really big distinction to make. Like the more candidly we can have these conversations, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And Steve, I mean, being very, very mindful of what Khan's just said, nonetheless, from your perspective, coming from, you know, from the regiment, I can't imagine a more blokey bloke career path to have taken in terms of an external stigma that's attached to that. And for you, when you spoke openly about your history with bullying at school and so on, and how that impacted you and what you took away from that, which were positives, certainly as from what I've listened to and read. How did you go about taking that first step with breaking down the barriers of this, you know, this external perceived persona of the career path you'd chosen?
Well, I guess for myself, it, you know, stems back to childhood, and for most of us, it does. You know, the issues that, you know, I put the body armor on when I was quite young, and it was well fastened and secure for many years, and I shut myself down. It served me well as a child. In my teens, you know, I struggled, and I actually used exercise as a means to try and change myself. I didn't think too much of myself. I didn't like who I was, and I did it in a way to gain acceptance, I guess, from my peers and you know, parents and those that were older than me. And I guess I pushed myself hard and found myself in the military and doing those roles for some maybe delusion or illusion that I needed to step up to this mark, and if I did, I'd get this praise and this acknowledgement. And I did that for many years, and I think I was so scared and living in a sympathetic state, fight or flight, I didn't realize I was.
Right.
But looking back, I was always sick. I was always getting a cold. I was always run down. I was always just, I'd crush myself in workouts, and then it'd take me days sometimes to come back from things. And I remember after the CrossFit Games in 2009, the thought of exercise and doing anything hard for about a year after it I couldn't even entertain the thought. And I had to have a long, hard conversation with myself. And I was 33 at that time. And I was just like, what am I doing? I was engaging, I guess, with thought processes and an emotional state of being that came from a lot of aggression and anger and upset and self-loathing. And I realized at that point in time that if I continued on that trajectory, I was done. I would have cooked myself, and I needed to do something about it. And that relationship with exercise back in my teens, it grew over time, because anyone knows you do anything hard enough for long enough, and you got to dig deep. You got to ask yourself some pretty big questions, and you might be engaging with it superficially at the start, but to maintain it long term and have that commitment, that consistency, that fortitude, mental strength. You've got to have a sound intent. Yeah, and at that point in time, it was like, doesn't matter. I know what it comes down to is what you're willing to do when the lights are off, doors are closed, and no one else is around. And I enjoy doing what I do to that degree that I can do that. And having others around just magnifies it and makes it so much more beautiful and joyful to share in those experiences. But at the heart of it, I can do it on my own. And I guess I'm fortunate. I've always been able to do that. Sorry, the kids are all at someone's house and they're all running around killing each other. But they'll probably burst in here in a second. But
any squeaky toys?
Yeah, it's so 33, and then moving forward was my kids, and realizing that I didn't want to parent or be a father to my kids like how my father was to us growing up. And not that that's his fault, but it could definitely do with some improvement. And I didn't need to use a lot of anger and and aggression to kind of subdue a situation because I was uncomfortable. And you could come at it from a calmer place and learn to just be a little more eloquent with your language and the words that you use, and not so aggressive, because most blokes are big enough and have deep enough without even raising your voice. And to be a little more gentle, kind and calm. And I guess I've just deepened that understanding. Geez, mate, I was 44 on Friday. Can you believe it?
Oh,
and
there you go.
And things like what's that? Yeah, I can't believe it myself. It's like, wow, 44, but it's just a life of many wonderful things, and more so than anything is I guess some clarity and understanding, and a body that functions well. I move better nowadays than I moved in my younger years, and that's because of that awareness and a willingness to explore. We all have injuries and all of these things, and it's I think when you go after it and you and you chip away at it, we're organic, aren't we?
That's exactly right.
We can transform ourselves. We're shapeshifters. We can do amazing things, but it's a willingness to want to do that. And it first starts, within our head. We conceptualize and have these ideas, these views around things, and then we put the effort in, and we create the form, whether that's ourselves or whatever we're most passionate about.
Absolutely. Well, you're certainly both of you are leading by example, which I know I appreciate, and I think many others do. Now, we've used the term mental toughness a few times this evening so far, and we actually had an email sent in from Elkie Brooks with a question that kind of centered around mental toughness and mental blocks. But I'm actually pleased to say that Elkie has also joined us live in the Zoom room, and I think Jim from Undefined Media is pushing buttons in the background, and Elkie's about to. There she is. Elkie, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're doing well, thanks, Elkie. Where are you streaming from? Where are you from, Elkie?
In Torquay, so just
Nice.
in Victoria.
Yeah, fantastic, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us.
Right.
And I know you have a question, and it can be for either or one of our, I guess, Steve or Khan. Over to you. What's your question, Elkie?
So my question is for both of you, just like if you've ever suffered any mental blocks, just how you've overcome them, whether that be leading up to CrossFit Games and training for that, or as work as a personal trainer. So how you guys have overcome those.
Maybe Khan, do you want to lead on that one? Great question, Elkie.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a pretty common one. I think, I come up against mental blocks all the time as an athlete, as a human being, and I think I kind of come at it in two different ways. The first one is that I will always, and this is something that I've got a lot better at doing, I will always ground myself in, I'm going to call it like a higher purpose, so a sense of like a knowledge and an understanding of why I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And so I know I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what that is for me and what it is that genuinely motivates me, and making big enough and powerful enough for me that at the absolute pits of what everything's going on, it gives me enough kind of reason why to go through that suffering. In fact, there's a brilliant quote that kind of goes with that from Nietzsche, and it's, "He who has a why can endure any how." And so I think that's always for me a big overarching thing that I can anchor back to when I do come up against a block. Now, that said, it doesn't necessarily take away from when I say, like, let's say I am feeling anxious leading up to a competition, or like that negative self-talk and that doubt. And I think, like what Steve was talking about earlier, like that acceptance of the negative as part of the journey, and knowing that when I feel anxious, when I feel nervous, when I feel upset, when I feel all these negative emotions, rather than trying to push back against them and ignore them, I just let them happen and understand that they're a part of the journey, and that they don't actually have any power over me or my performance unless I let them. You know, I know that I've worked hard enough to do what I'm about to do, and I have to rely on the fact that even though I may be nervous, and to the point where like I'll throw up before some events, I'm so like sick with nerves and anxiety. I've competed with having slept barely an hour the night before at regionals because I was so nervous about kind of bits and pieces. And you look at that 2016, perfect example. First time in 3 years, I found myself outside the top 5 looking in, going into the final day of competition. And I knew I had to pull something out my ass. And I don't think I slept more than, say, 30, 45 minutes that night. But I still managed to come back and take a third in the first event and then win the final event, because I just put all of those kind of nervous and like those terrible thoughts into the back of my mind. Well, not into the back of my mind. I just let them run there. I didn't try to push them away. I didn't try to tell myself I'm not nervous. I just was super accepting of the fact that I was. And then again, it all goes back to that vulnerability, being willing to feel negative emotions and understand that they're just a part of the journey. But then I think that anchoring and that why, like that's super duper important as well. And it sort of seems cliche, and people harp on about it for a reason. And it's because it can be really powerful. But it's not like a sit down in 10 minutes and you'll realize exactly what that is. Sometimes it takes like big life events to happen for you. It certainly did for me, to really be able to figure out what it was that I got out of, let's say, being an athlete. Let's probably use that as one of the biggest things that I regularly come up against mental blocks in. And I can always anchor back to that meaning, to why I'm doing that. And then that allows me to push past it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Khan. And Steve, how about yourself, mate, when it comes to either training or competing, overcoming the blocks that may pop up?
Well, I guess first and foremost is that you've had the ability to acknowledge mental blocks. So there is, in and of itself, awareness. And a lot of people lack or aren't in tune enough to be aware of mental blocks because they're too resistant. So things start to come up for them and they will push away. And a lot of the time we create justification and almost excuses for reasons why not. But that acknowledgement of the of mental blocks and that recognition, like Khan was saying, is just observe and just let things be. And a lot of the time it does. It takes practice to engage or be in the midst of something with all of that kind of running at the same time. And I found that for myself, well, you know, my younger years, definitely the training side of things, which I would consider is like an active meditation, because you help to calm the mind, because you draw your focus, you narrow it into what it is that you're doing. But that doesn't mean that what you're not dealing with at that point in time has been dealt with. You've maybe just pushed it to the side for a little bit. But bringing it back to just being still, and one of the hardest things to do is to just sit quietly on the floor and let whatever is be, what's going on within your mind and within your physiology, your body, and just accepting of that, and just calm things down. You know, provide reassurance for yourself. Let yourself know that you're safe. And with that acknowledgement thing I was saying at the start, they just calm, and you find that you can go into, you know, whatever it is that you need to go into with a little more focus. And, you know, another perfect example Calm said there is that you've put the effort in, the training's there, the consistency's there. You know, you provide yourself with that reassurance, and then you go after it. You know, only last year I did an Ironman distance triathlon with Matty Rogers, and you know, I've done some long cycles and runs and stuff in the army, but gluing a 3.8k swim together with a 180k bike and then a marathon off the back of that, I can tell you, mate, that's a different ball game to CrossFit. But you're absolutely, I would say, stupid to think that you could participate in something like that without any training, or with very little training. And you got to be diligent. You got to put the hours and the time in. And I came up with many mental blocks, and a lot of it for me was the swimming and the running. The cycling I pretty much had in the bag. That was my strength. But the running, this idea, if I'm going to go and run, I want to run 5-minute Ks, you know, or 5:30 Ks. But really, my body, and with all the training that was in the bag, I was maybe only capable of running 6-minute or 6-minute 30 Ks. But to go out there and actually run at those times, which I know I could run faster, but because of the training I was incapable at that moment, helped me build the foundation. But it's overcoming those obstacles, and those obstacles are psychological. They're a mental obstacle. And with the training and that consistency, and you build at it, those times gradually come down. So when I hit that marathon off the back of cycling 100, or the swim and cycling 180 Ks, you know, I started out at 5:45 Ks. And I think, you know, I averaged 6-minute 25 Ks for a marathon, which I'd never run before in my life, at the age of 43. And, you know, that, I think maybe that's just a perfect example of some mental blocks. And I just wanted to prepare myself as best as possible for that day. And I was just fortunate that, you know, the gods were looking down on me favorably, because many people come unstuck even with all the training in the world.
That's exactly right. That's a huge undertaking, mate. Well done.
Nice. Thank you, guys.
No worries, Elkie, and I can see you diligently taking notes. And thanks, lads, for the great answers. Now, I believe we have Shannon on the line as well. I think Jim's going to unmute you, Shannon, and I believe you've got a question for one or both of the gents.
Hi. So this kind of leads on a bit of what Elkie said. So she's started with it. I have a friend that has quite a bad injury and can't actually do CrossFit at the moment, and is struggling in terms of mental health and staying motivated in that way. And I myself am struggling. I really want to master muscle ups and gymnastics. I'm shocking. Like, I'm terrible. And I guess mentally hitting it, I'll get so far and then take a lot of steps back. So I guess leading on from Elkie, any little other tips to add, I guess, for both of us injury wise, and when you're really trying to stick it out with something, just things to keep in our mind, because I get quite easily frustrated and cranky at times. But anything else, I guess, further to add? And it can be for anyone if they want to answer. I'm totally open.
Let's start with Calm.
Yeah. Set the bar really, really low. Like really low. So when I go through a period where I'm really unmotivated, so let's use COVID-19, for example. Super motivated at the start. I was meant to be going away twice during the last kind of few months for some competitions. The last 12 months have undoubtedly been the most I've put into my training, the best my training's ever been, and the best shape I've ever been in. And probably the first time I've really just gone, do you know what? For 12 months, I'm going to make being an athlete my 100% focus. And it was cool. It was amazing. Like the progress that I've had in the last 12 months has been awesome. I felt really, really good. Had these competitions kind of lined up as a bit of a benchmark to test where I was at. Go overseas to do them, and then boom, rug pulled out from under us, that's gone. So I sort of tried to go from that place of being right up where I like in a really good shape. So cool, I'll just keep training like normal, because I don't know when I'm going to be able to come back and compete. I really don't want to lose what I've already got, this little bit of momentum that I've got at the moment, or I'll start to be annoyed. You know what happened was that was fine for 2 weeks. As kind of lockdown sort of kept going, I realized that I had no clue when I was coming back to training. And rather than try to drop the bar back down, I just kept trying to push on with my, 2 sessions plus an additional cardio session here and there. Make sure you're stretching for this amount of time per day. And I was just getting really frustrated, really angry at myself, really anxious about worrying that my performance was going to drop from where it had been. So what I did was I dropped it back and I set the bar extremely low, and I went back in from there. So it was 4 times a week. I had to do 2 parts of a 2-part training day. So like 1 thing, 2 things in a day. That's all I had to do. And for someone that normally does maybe like a 7-8 part training day, that's setting the bar really, really low. And how motivation works, you have to be ticking boxes to keep motivation going. The way that it kind of works neurologically and stuff like that is it feeds off success. You have to be ticking things off. Otherwise, you're going to be getting frustrated and it's going to be hard to keep going with that motivation. So if you set the bar really, really, really low, like really low, super achievable, process-based goals. So whether it's process-based, meaning something that you can control and it's just a part of the training process itself, rather than if I don't have a muscle up in the next 4 weeks, I'm going to bit the dummy and I'm not going to train anymore. It gives you power to be achieved. It gives you power over achieving those goals. And by starting to tick off the little goals, that's going to in of itself provide you with motivation. So let's look at your mate with his or her injury. They might not be able to do CrossFit exactly as CrossFit is, but they're injured, right? So logically, there's a reason why they can't do that. I guarantee you they can do 1 thing every day that's still going to be productive towards them improving their health and fitness, that they can just tick that off. Do that for 7 days, then add another thing. Do that for 7 days, then add another thing, right? And keep building it on from there so that you feel like you're still moving towards something. I mean, that can be something as simple as get a really good book on sports performance and read 10 pages a day. You can be completely bedridden and still do that, and you're achieving a goal that's benefiting you and that's pushing you, it's still moving you towards where you want to go, rather than setting the bar here, not hitting it, and then going, fuck this, I'm out, I'm leaving, I don't want to train anymore. So that's my biggest thing for anyone that's struggling with motivation. Set the bar way lower and then know that you're going to build on from there.
No, that's really good. Thank you.
Dave, what can you add to that for us?
Yeah.
Well, I guess, in a roundabout way, it's very similar to what Khan was saying. And I guess the one word is expectation. Be mindful of expectation. And a lot of the time you can work yourself up, into a tether because you're trying so hard and you want to have something now when you know, the universe is saying you ain't having it right now. And that's where the consistency and the discipline and the work comes in, and you just got to keep chipping away at it. And if you're coming at it from a certain angle, or, you know, like a bearing on a compass, and that's not working for you, well, then you've just got to rethink things. You've got to, you know, shift tact and come at it from another angle. And if you don't know, that's where there's, hey, we've got technology nowadays, and Dr. Google helps, you know, and works wonders with getting online and just watching how others break down a muscle up, you know, check out what Khan's doing, and, you know, put into practice some of the things that he does, or, you know, one of the other, you know, athletes that you see just making muscle ups look like they're easy, and giving it a go. And that's the big thing, is the frustration. It's that agitation. We create our own resistance through expectation, and just calm things down, you know, bring that bar back down, and just chip away at some of the smaller things. You know, a lot of the reasons people don't get a muscle up is because of that first pull, you know, and getting those rings, or if it's the bar, to the chest. So working on improving, you know, some of the baselines in doing that, you know, and then dips, and then there's that neural transition from the pull into the bottom position of a dip, and then the drive out. So just neurally facilitating that and greasing the groove. You break it down to its parts, and then try and bring it back together as a whole down the track. Doesn't work, all right, where is it that I need to come at it from again? And that's just the muscle up. And gosh, this could apply to anything in life. And but you've just got to be mindful of expectation and due diligence. You just got to keep going. You want something bad enough, you'll get it. And yeah, it's just a matter of time, and surrounding yourself with people who believe enough in, that's one of the things that I really enjoy, is imparting a belief into people that they then believe more in themselves. And that's why I think CrossFit facilities are so darn amazing, because you walk into one of those rooms and you've got others pumping you up, and they're shouting your praises, and they're uplifting. You can achieve amazing things. And then look at competition. It just helps. It helps people to just step it up to the next level, and they do things. You know, they set PBs and PRs and all of those things. You know, in that kind of meaner sense. So don't give up.
Beauty. Thanks, Steve. And
thank you. And my mate said thank you as well for the injury advice too.
No worries.
Beauty. Thank you, Shannon, for that question. Gentlemen, I'm mindful of time, but I've got one more for each of you, and they're selfish ones that I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to start with you, Khan. I was really fascinated before, mate. You said not to necessarily react to people talking about mental health and saying things like, oh, that's really brave. And I was really interested by that, because I think that's probably been a reaction that I've had, to sort of think, oh, it's so brave to come out if someone talks about their mental health. So I guess what I want to follow up with, because it was really insightful, how should we react? Like what should the response be when somebody does talk openly about mental health? How as a friend or as a mate or as a coach, what should the response be?
Mate, fantastic question. And I guess given the short time frame before, it is extremely brave to speak openly about mental health for the first time, and when you are starting to come to terms with it. I don't want to minimize the fact that it takes a great deal of vulnerability to do that. And what I meant by that more so was, I wish it didn't, because that is how, like, stigma exists on both sides of the equation. When we say, geez, that's so embarrassing, there is then a stigma attached to that. When we do say, geez, that's really brave, that in of itself attaches a stigma to it as well.
Yeah. In
terms of having the conversations with other people, though, it's a really tough one, because it depends, I guess, with what they're coming with you with. But the biggest and most important thing to do is to understand that most of it, and again, pending the severity of whether they're dealing with just a bit of general anxiety or an anxiety disorder, a little bit of general sadness or a genuine depressive disorder. the first and most important thing to do is don't minimize what they're saying. No matter how, like, they're probably coming to you in a highly emotional state. And the absolute worst thing you can do when someone is emotional is tell them that what they're feeling is invalid, because all that's going to do is amplify it out of control. And we see it so much at the moment with the world. Everyone's got an opinion, and a highly emotionally charged opinion on all the different issues that the world is going through right now. And I spend way too much time reading comments on Instagram and different posts and just watching the world descend into chaos, because I just defies belief in my head sometimes. But where you see this conflict stem from, it's where people push back against an emotional reaction and they try to say, no, you're wrong because of this. And it's one of the worst ways that you can deal with someone that is emotional. And I mean, look, I'm not perfect at this as well. I'm sure my partner would say the same thing, but we need to start to get better at trying to understand, or not understand where people are coming from, empathize with them, and do our best not to minimize whatever it is that they're feeling. And that also includes not trying to problem solve. I really think, particularly for guys, when we're faced with a problem, we want to solve it. And it's just human nature. And it stems from a good place. Like, if you've got someone you care about is going through a tough time and they reach out to you about it, what do you want to do? You want to fix that. Most of the time, though, you're not going to fix it in that initial kind of conversation where they're coming to you emotionally charged. They probably just want to listen. So that would be, that was just a really roundabout way of saying that the best thing you can do when someone comes to you and they want to talk about their mental health is just listen. Hold space for them. Try to understand as best as possible, rather than pushing back with your opinion or your thoughts on it. Even if you think that your thoughts and opinion are the logical thing in that situation, it's not going to help. It's not going to solve the problem, and you're only going to add fuel to the fire. When they've calmed down, that's when you can kind of work on problem solving together, but it's got to be collaborative, and you should probably let the person that's got the problem initiate that act of problem solving, right? When they're talking to you about potential solutions, that's your time to kind of chime in and offer some of your own thoughts and opinions, particularly if you're not qualified in that sort of area as well. Because I think that that's where inadvertently, that even in of itself adds to the stigma. When you're feeling something so strongly and someone gives you a real simple solution, that's how you're going to fix it. Man, like, I'm really stressed, I'm really anxious, I'm really stressed, I'm really anxious. Oh, you need to get more sleep. That's it. That's the answer to all my problems in that statement right there. Man, I've never thought of that before in my life. And can you see where someone's saying that's going to come from a place of genuine love and care? And they're like, fuck, I've read all these studies on sleep. You should probably get more sleep. And they're right. Fuck, I should sleep more. But in the heat of the moment, it's very minimizing of the way that the person feels. But in terms of getting it, that's when you're having those conversations. If we're looking at kind of more culturally, how do we get rid of the stigma? It's really fucking tricky, because you do want to encourage people to speak up, and that is difficult, and that takes a great amount of strength and vulnerability. But perhaps it's on that kind of big level, people like myself that are comfortable speaking out about it, or people that you see regularly speaking out in that space, being more kind of just, allowing it to just be a conversation rather than a kind of a round of applause for this person's bravery, or geez, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. And sadly, I still see both sides of the coin. Like, I've seen on other people speaking about mental health, and people will go like, oh, I don't know why you're speaking publicly about that. Isn't that, that should be for your own private life and stuff like that. Like, get fucked. Like, encourage people to speak, but encourage them to speak in a way that allows for continued conversation, rather than it's just like speak and done.
Mate, it's just brilliant and super practical advice. I think I'm like Elkie. I was taking notes here. So thank you for sharing, mate. It's excellent stuff. Steve, my last one for you is very superficial. I'm sorry, I have to ask you. Everyone talks about the 2009 CrossFit Games like they were the worst by far. Is that the truth, mate? The 09 Games, are they the worst?
Well, who said that?
Oh, I just...
mate, I haven't competed in any of the others.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But they talk about that like it was just the destroyer of souls and the programming that year. I think a few people, if you've been around the traps of CrossFit for a while, you'll know this, but a lot of people potentially don't know you're the highest ever male finisher that Australia's had at the CrossFit Games. Do you reminisce about those times often, like the 09 Games?
Oh, not too much. Like it's kind of in the past. It's, you know, hey, I'm proud of my achievements, but CrossFit as a sport and the caliber of athletes has definitely evolved. And I guess, much like talking the topic of mental health, there's got to be pioneers. There's got to be people kind of paving the way, and then those who come behind, deep understanding and a knowledge base that's next level. But for me, that was kind of what I knew, and that was where CrossFit was at that point in time, and that was the expectation, was to kind of rough and tough it out. And I remember standing there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and Dave Castro telling us what we were actually going to do, and everyone's like, "Oh shit, here we go!" And everything was printed on like A4 pieces of paper, and it was very rudimentary. And I remember my daughter, she was with us. She was only 18 months old, and she was covered in dirt from head to toe from running around and out on the out at the property there. And oh mate, I had a blast, but it freaking ruined me. I was after some of the most simply prescribed events, they're just absolutely hectic. They just left you on the floor. And there were twice I got carried into the tent with the medics and the like, and they were actually going to send me to hospital because I think I started to experience a little heat exhaustion. Because you got to remember, it was winter back here in Australia, so I was training leading up to them, and got to San Francisco and out to Aromas, and it was pretty darn hot. And the first event was something like a 7K hill run, and that crushed everyone. I think Jason Kalipa passed out in the run and smashed his face on the ground, and he fought back to finish just behind me, and it was a reverse start. So sorry, my brother just tried calling me then. It was a reverse starting sequence. So depending on where you finished in the event previous was where you started in the next. So if you finished last in the first event, you started the next event first.
Yeah.
And it was just, they were toying around with a whole host of different things. We were just their guinea pigs.
Brutal.
All good. Conscious of time, gents. Great questions, Ed, and equally great answers. Now, we have focused on the importance of mental health and our desire to make it a regular part of daily conversations. Our two guests have been candid and compassionate around the subject, leading the way as role models, and for that, we appreciate them. For everyone watching now or in the future, let's all be vigilant. Let's keep an eye on our loved ones and our mates. When you notice a change, no matter how small, trust your gut and ask, are you okay? Then follow up with that conversation as we've talked about tonight. If you're concerned about someone and you're not sure how to have that conversation, the team at Are You Okay have a whole heap of information on the website. So please reach out. They're an awesome team and they're there to help. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in on this Australian long weekend. Stephen Kahn from Ed and myself, a huge thank you for joining us tonight. And until next time, everyone, lead by example, have fun, and stay safe.
Thank you, boys.